What you're seeing right here is something that's been shown right in this video for the first time ever on YouTube. It's an iconic photo of a young Tom Hanks. You wouldn't believe it, but this is true. This is the photo of the two of us at the Holy Child Care Center for young children, but way back in the 1950s. Let me put my cursor right over here real briefly over Tom. Look at little Tom right there. Holy cow. Doesn't look anything like he does today, but that's him. It's been verified by a whole bunch of people who have seen this shot, and they helped verify it for me. There he is. Look, he's trying to do his best to be behaved. He's been described by some of the former teachers that I interviewed way back, and a lot of them I would imagine are deceased by this time. I don't know how many of them might still be alive, but well, what a photograph. And there he is. He's trying to do his best to look like he's trying to behave, but he was described as being kind of a mischievous, rambunctious little fella. He was all around, and he had that reputation, of course. I, of course, was perceived as a saint. Now, I'm just joking right there. Look at this attractive young girl right here. She's praying. She looks perfect. This could be a photo or a classic photo, and it's already a photo, of course. But look at me. I'm right way in the back. And oh, what a little angel I was. I tried to come off as an angel, of course, but maybe I wasn't. But Tom and I chose to be buddies. I think maybe we weren't loners, but we'd like to hang out with each other because we were kind of the same bent, the same mindset, I'm trying to say. And during I would call it class time, but it was time for us to play. We would sit down and we'd have crayons on tables, and Tom and I sat right next to each other, and we scribbled, and we did all kinds of drawings. And as I recall, some of our best drawings were of rockets. In those days, you got to remember that rockets were starting to go up in outer space for the first time. So it was on the imagination of us little fellows. At that time, shortly before then, there was something called the Sputnik, and that was a satellite that the Russians shot around the Earth. So we were all thinking about those kind of things, and the imagination of little boys, it can run wild in those days. At this particular school, they didn't teach us to, put our heads under the desk in case there was a nuclear bomb headed our way. Of course, those kind of checks were going on in schools, and children were learning to do those kind of things. Put your head under the desk, like, yeah, supposedly that's going to save you from a nuclear bomb. And I'm sure that Tom, in subsequent years, he probably had to go through that kind of hogwash, and I certainly did. But anyway, this was the time that we hung out, and I'm going to tell you all kinds of more stories about that time, stories about us during that era, stories about what became of both of us, and why we no longer speak to each other, those kind of things. When Tom Hanks and I were little boys running around Reno having fun, his father worked right here as a chef, fry cook in the Mapes Hotel. Now, at that time, pretty interestingly, a lot of big name celebrities now became big name celebrities would entertain there. Their names were Sammy Davis Jr., Liberace, and Tony Bennett. In fact, Frank Sinatra appeared there during a lower point in Frank's career in the early 1950s. And so that has quite some history. And in fact, that's where a lot of folks stayed during the 1960 Squaw Valley Winter Olympics, and even the film crew of The Misfits. That was a movie that was filmed featuring Marilyn Monroe and Clark Gable, and Miss Monroe stayed for a part of that time in the hotel. Pretty interesting. Shortly before and then after Tom's parents divorced, his childhood became extremely mobile and unpredictable. He has told and said to interviewers lots of times of his many different houses and cities that he lived in, sometimes moving every year or two. Because of that instability, he spent much of his youth watching people very carefully. Hanks has described himself as a kid who would quietly observe adults, study how people behaved, notice small differences in personalities, mentally and catalog their voices, gestures, and attitudes. Later in life, he said his habit helped him become better actor because he had already spent years studying human behavior. Now, when he was in Reno with me around that time, it was quite interesting to him, and it was a formative period in his life where he was able to do these things. During those years, his father, as I previously indicated, worked at the Mapes Hotel, but Tom had a chance to look and observe at the rough and tumble casino town. It was filled with tourists, performers, gamblers, and colorful personalities. And this constantly shifted between glamour and ordinary working life. From the perspective of a kid, that environment exposed him to many different types of people at an early age. Many film historians and critics, they insist that Tom Hanks' acting strength comes from something distinctive. He plays very observant characters, people who notice small details about others. For example, Forrest Gump, quietly observing the world around him. Captain Miller, in Saving Private Ryan, carefully reading the men under his command. Jim Lovell, in Apollo 13, calmly analyzing situations under pressure. These performances rely less on flashy acting and more on careful human observation, something Hanks himself says he developed as a kid, starting around the time he was hanging around with me. Well, I don't take credit for that, but it's just interesting that this was quite a coincidence. And here's an interesting quote from Hanks that explains this idea very well. Because we moved around so much, I was always the new kid. When you're the new kid, watch people. You study them. That habit of studying people became the foundation of Tom Hanks' acting. Interestingly, Tom's older brother, known as Larry Hanks, he was born as Lawrence Michael Larry Hanks. He was 3 years older than us, but Larry attended the same Holy Child care center that we did, and Larry was born about 1953. So this makes him almost 3 years older than the two of us. Today, that brother Larry, known as Larry, he's 73 years old. So yeah, there he is, and he's a kind of a well-respected entomologist, a person that studies insects, and he has an affiliation with the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and his research focuses on insect ecology, invasive species, and forest pest management, and he has published numerous scientific papers in entomology. Now, Tom and I didn't hang out much with him when we were goofing around or while we were at the school. This gentleman, Larry, was much older, but a real nice guy as far as I recall. I only hang out with him, met him just a few times. I also feel a burning need to mention Tom Hanks' brother, Jim Hanks, who was born shortly, within a year or two after Tom left Reno. Actually, it was less than a year about. And that brother's name is Jim Hanks. And Jim was born way back in June of 1961. He is now 64 years old, and he's an actor and voice actor. Frequently provides the voice of Woody for video games, toy merchandise from the Toy Story series, and theme park attractions. He works for the voices for those, and he has done some animated appearances tied to the Toy Story universe. And as you can imagine, his voice, probably because they were born of the same parents, and then they had the same biological buildup. Their voices are similar, and that for a reason, Jim's voice is so similar to Tom's. Others who attended Holy Child during the same era as Tom and myself include Gary L. Carano. Now, he's executive chairman of Caesars Entertainment, one of the world's largest casino companies, and it has half of the largest casinos in Las Vegas. Gary's younger brother Glenn, just 6 months older than Tom and myself, also attended Holy Child during the same period. Glenn grew up quite famously to become a backup quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys NFL team. Now, he was the backup quarterback just right behind Roger Staubach. But Glenn gained a really great reputation all over the country as one of the nation's premier quarterbacks in football. And after he left that, Glenn joined the gaming industry along with other members of his family, including the late Donald Carano, the Carano brothers' father. And later, Glenn served as executive vice president of Caesars Entertainment, and he earlier had worked at Eldorado Resorts, which is headquartered in Reno. And of course, Eldorado Resorts later became part of the Caesars empire. Right here is an iconic, rarely seen photo of Marilyn Monroe as she approached the Washoe County Courthouse in Reno, Nevada for her pending divorce against baseball superstar Joe DiMaggio. All this was during an iconic period when Reno had an international reputation as the divorce capital of the world. From the 1920s through the early 1960s, Reno became known worldwide for that nickname. And here's why. Nevada had the shortest divorce residency requirement in the United States. By the 1930s, it required only 6 weeks of residence. And people from across the country came to Reno, stayed 6 weeks, and then obtained divorces at the Washoe County Courthouse. Well, a system was created for the entire divorce industry, and it supplied ranches where people stayed, hotels like the Mapes where people stayed. Lawyers came here to handle the quickie divorce proceedings. But interestingly enough, during this period, in the early 1960s-ish, Tom Hanks' parents were divorced in this same building. Tom Hanks' mother was Janet Marilyn Frager Hanks, and his father was named Amos Hanks. Well, here's what happened. They got a divorce, like I just said. I later, many years ago, went and checked out the divorce records, and yes, indeed, that's what happened. Of course, Tom Hanks' mother, she lived from 1930 to 2016, and his father passed away many years ago as well. So Tom Hanks' father took Tom and 2 of Tom's siblings, and those 3 children went and moved in with Amos Hanks. Well, one of the siblings went with the mother, Janet. So the whole family was split in half by this divorce. And as you can very well imagine, that probably affected Tom quite a bit. I'm not sure exactly how much, if at all, but this began the period after Tom left Reno, where he had to move frequent times all around Nevada and California during much of his childhood. So he kind of had a semi-itinerant childhood during that period. And it was during Reno, my time with Tom in Reno, that he began this process of studying human behavior. Right here, you're looking at the site, the exact building of the former Holy Child Daycare Center. It's at 440 Reno Avenue in Reno, Nevada, about 2 doors down from Arlington Avenue. Now, my grandpa, when I was a little kid, used to joke that this neighborhood where it's located was for the ultra wealthy people, the so-called people in the silk stocking district, silk stocking district. And he referred to that because that's where only rich families could afford to have their women wearing silk stockings. And right now the building looks exactly like it did way back then, the exterior, except for the sign that you see on the front of the building. It's been purchased, the site has been purchased by the Reno Housing Authority, and that agency plans to build, now get this, 42 to 44 low-income housing units on the site beginning in May 2027. Oh boy. Okay, so now the Reno Housing Authority, it works to help people that have low incomes developing housing for those people so they'll have a place to live. So the neighborhood that my late grandpa used to joke was for the wealthy people is now being moved in. All the kinds of folks are moving in from low income, and that's just fine. The neighborhood still is rather high end to a degree compared to much of Reno, and that neighborhood is in the southwest section of Reno, the old southwest section called the Newlands neighborhood. And of course, this is the same site where Tom and I would attend the Holy Child. Yes, sir. This is it. Right on your screen, you see the residence where Tom Hanks lived when he was 4 years old and 5 years old. This is it. At the time, it was a fourplex, four separate units, but they're all in one building. And up to about 3 or 4 years ago, it was getting very run down, this structure. So whoever owned it just refurbished the place and really spruced it up so that it looks great right now. But this residence, at the time that Tom and his family lived there, they were in really cramped conditions. I don't know even how their little family could have tolerated each other. No wonder his parents got a divorce. Of course, there were other reasons than just living in a cramped home, a cramped residence. But at the time, like I indicated, it was a rather seedy, rundown neighborhood, and it was a place at that time that nobody really wanted to live in. But in a lot of communities or mid-sized cities or larger cities around the United States, some people are going in and refurbishing entire neighborhoods, and this just happens to be one of the entire neighborhoods that's being, refurbished by proud homeowners and proud business owners as well. Now, at the time that Tom lived there, and his father, of course, as previously stated, worked at the Mapes Hotel downtown, they had to do something to bring Tom to the Holy Child because it was a ways away at that time. These days, you'd think it was a hop, skip, and a jump, but in those days, Reno was a rather small little town, and it has changed considerably since then. It's now a huge metropolitan area, not huge by New York City or Houston or Dallas, Miami, Chicago standards, but huge by the standards of Nevada. And so that's pretty good thing, a good improvement. And so, yeah, but like I said, his family had to haul him across to another side of the town, the so-called Silk Stocking District, where the more wealthy people lived. But I guess Tom's family must have been very comfortable doing that. And of course, at the Holy Child facility, he was able to learn, practice with those. There were a bunch of the Irish nuns that were in running that place, and those Irish nuns taught us all about, etiquette and those kind of things. So that's where Tom went, and that's really good. So now I'm going to show you where I lived when I was a child at the same time that Tom lived right here. This small, modest home, which you can see right here, is under construction at the time that I took this photo that you're seeing. I took the photo on the day that I produced the video that you're watching now. And this home, where I lived from ages 11 months to 11 years old, so I lived there for just about a little over 10 years in this modest home on Yory Avenue in Reno, Nevada. Now, this, at the time that I lived in this home with my family, of course, it was a lower middle class home, I would say. It's not middle class or upper middle class, but it was the lower middle class. And Tom, I believe, lived in a lower class residence at that time. Not to compare us or say that one person is better than the other. Of course not. That's not what we're here to discuss. And that's not true. And such a thing is ludicrous to even say such a thing. But in any event, this is where I grew up. And I had there was a tragedy in my family. My little brother died in a household accident. There's a long story about that. And so it was tragic. Obviously, my mother was extremely sad for about a year or two after my little brother perished in an accident at home. And as a result of that, my late grandfather would drive me clear across town so that I could stay and be during the daytime in the Holy Child daycare center, and that there was a purpose for that. And if it wasn't for my little brother perishing, and that's whatever, that I would never have met Tom. And so but it was a great place for me to go, and it was a safe place. And my mother could start feeling a little bit better. Of course, you never get over the loss of a child. Backyard right now. Obviously under reconstruction now. This is the backyard of the Reno home on Yory Avenue where I grew up as a child. Now, this is the backyard where I hope to celebrate my birthday with Tom Hanks. I had invited him over to our residence for my birthday, but about a week and a half to 2 weeks before my birthday, Tom didn't show up anymore at school. Well, I suppose, as you might have surmised by now, that one day I went to the Holy Child and Tom wasn't there anymore, and I just thought, well, he's gone. I never gave it much thought. I missed him a lot, but he just wasn't there anymore, and he never showed up again. So that's what happens when you're a little kid and when you're growing up, like I previously mentioned through earlier here, that life is like a bunch of deaths. Like, you know people that you were with in the first grade, second grade, so on, high school, even maybe university level, and you don't see them again for the rest of your life, and they're gone. Essentially, they're dead to you, and you're dead to them. Well, I imagine very much that Tom didn't remember me, and I remembered him, of course, but I happen to be one of those people that can remember specific events that happened to me, unbelievably as it's true, like when I was 2, 3, 4, 5, and beyond. I remember a lot of stories from my life, as people who watch my videos either have discovered or soon will discover if you happen to watch more of my videos. Anyway, Tom has said in interviews in recent years that he doesn't remember anything before he was age 7. It's all blank to him, that part of his life. Maybe because that part of his life was so difficult. Who knows? I've seen scientific studies, research, psychology studies of many kinds over the years that indicate that some people remember their early lives much more than other people do. There's no specific reason, from what I understand, why some people have better memories than others in that regard, but I just happen to be one of those people that remembers. Tom forgets. And there was a major development. I later became a respected news reporter. I became an entertainment columnist later in my journalistic career, before I retired from journalism and became a prolific writer of dozens of books. As a ghostwriter, my name is not on any of those books. By the way, in any event, while I was still a reporter later in my career, something quite interesting happened, and that was on the night when Tom was up for one of his numerous Oscar nominations. And so that morning I thought, hey, it would be great for my readers, for our newspaper's readers, if I go ahead, and it was a newspaper that was located in Reno. It was called the Reno Gazette-Journal. I thought, well, it would be really fun if I did a story about Tom attending the school. And so I went on the morning of the Oscars ceremony. So it was like 6 or 8 hours prior to the scheduled Oscar ceremony that I went to the Holy Child facility. In fact, that's the last time I was ever there. Or I think I went there a little later in that day to get a photograph that they were going to provide for me. But I went, I inquired, and interestingly enough, there was a woman that worked there, and her name was Lisa Plott, Plott, at the time that I visited the Holy Child facility then, and I believe I was around, we will say, I was 38 years old. So it was about 32 years after Tom and I both attended the school together, and I went there and I inquired, and lo and behold, there were people there, and their records indicated that, yes, indeed, Tom had attended that school then when I was still a student. And I said, well, hey, do you have any of the old artwork that we had at that time? Any of the artwork? And they said, well, yes, we've saved the artwork throughout the years, and the artwork is in files that we have kept for each child. And I thought, wow, that is amazing. Why would they save that artwork? Well, it was just in case somebody would happen to inquire if they wanted the artwork. But think of the odds of the following thing happening. Yes, indeed, it happened. They indicated that the prior day, the day before I showed up to inquire about Tom and myself attending at the school, because I wanted the pictures of the rockets that we used to draw and those kind of things. They said that the previous day, and the previous day was around, I'd say March 23rd of 1994, and they brought all the records, all of the artwork, and they had to clean out all their drawers because it was just overflowing in the office at the Holy Child facility, and they brought my artwork from when I was a child and Tom's artwork from when Tom was a child, and they put it in the trash. And the garbage truck had arrived and taken away the trash just 2-3 hours prior to me showing up at the Holy Child facility to inquire about the artwork and Tom and whatnot. Can you imagine the odds of all that happening? My gosh. Well, I was interested and I went and wrote a story. I think a lot of people enjoyed the story. In fact, I got the artwork that I showed you at the beginning of this video, and that was the artwork in which it showed myself and Tom with some other children that were praying in the Holy Child facility. And by the way, I need to say that the Holy Child facility was pretty much operated by Irish nuns, and so it was of the Catholic faith. At that time, I was of the Catholic faith, no longer practiced that religion for just personal choices, whatnot. Not saying anything bad about Catholicism. That's a good thing that some people choose to worship in, so that's a great. But I assumed that Tom was of the Catholic faith as well. Who knows? But he was with all the rest of us, learning to pray, learning about all the Catholic rites that are performed, religious ceremonies in the Catholic Church. So we learned about all those things as little kids. And oh boy, lo and behold. And so I was just intrigued. I needed to have further confirmation, not just with the people that were in the office at the time that I visited. So they gave me the name of, I would call her old. Some people don't like that word, old. Along in years, an Irish nun. And she, at that time, in 1994, they gave me the phone number to where this nun lived in a retirement facility for nuns. I think it was around Carmel, California, which is, gosh, 250 miles away. I don't know the exact distance, away from Reno on the coast of California near the Pacific Ocean. And I talked to the old nun, and oh yes, I remember you, and I remember Tom. You were both, she talked to me and she gave me a nice little, I had a little interview with her, and it was a good thing. And I think there was such the readers enjoyed it so much. I think I got a call from some newspaper in London, England, that wanted me to write a little story for them about it as well. They inquired about the photo, but I must say that the photograph that you just saw, I believe it was stolen from the facility, because I went there years later. I think it was for the newspaper in London, England, that wanted me to write a story about it, a separate story with new stuff. I went back. The photo was gone. It had disappeared. Nobody knew where that photo was. And that photo, that we eventually had a different photo, and it was Tom, stretched out against because it was a different photo than the one I showed you at the beginning. And that one, Tom was praying, and Tom was doing a real good job of doing his little pray routine, as you saw, but it didn't quite work out the way that we all wanted it to. Yes, it all comes down to the fact that life changes. There's always change in our lives. At that time, after I wrote the story, I asked Tom's publicist, as the published story was being published, and she called me the following day, and the publicist, whose name I don't recall right now, I don't have her name right in front of me, but she said, yes, indeed, Tom did remember going to the Holy Child School, but I never inquired to ask her, asked her, if he remembered me at that time. And, it's not really important if he remembered me, of course. I remembered him, but, to this day, I'm probably a bleep on the radar screen of his memory system, and that's just fine because life goes on, and he's got his life to live, and I've got mine, and of course, I'm pretty well retired by now. He's not retired. He keeps real busy, of course, and that's great. So I I'm not saying, oh, I got to go out there and re-meet Tom Hanks, and boy, I met Tom Hanks, and brag about that I used to be his little buddy, because I'm sure that through Tom's life, Tom has had lots of friends, lots of buddies. He was at like a kind of an itinerant life, moving from school to school. Everybody now, there's probably tons and tons of people that are bragging that this very day, if they're old enough, if they've lived long enough, to say, I went to school one day with Tom Hanks. And I just happen to be one of those people. Kind of a fun thing for me to topic for dinner conversations. That's really fun. Yes, feel free to write your opinion in the comments section below. That's pretty fun, and life goes on. And hey, and what celebrities did you meet in your life? Go ahead and write those in the comment section below. Did you go to school with some person that became a celebrity, or are you a celebrity? Those are kind of fun and interesting things. Did you run across a celebrity, or just like in a grocery store or whatever? That's part of life, and it's pretty fun. It's great to have fun things to think about in life, and this type of the deal, it just happens to be one of those situations.